Hey guys, Andrew Henderson from Nomad Capitalist in what might be one of the most Americanized places in the world, Kuwait City, Kuwait. Zero income tax here in Kuwait. Wanted to talk about that. Wanted to answer a common question that we get at Nomad Capitalist, which is where can I go and pay zero income tax? Because as you've seen in some of our other videos, simply setting up an offshore company in and of itself probably doesn't allow you to save a lot of money on taxes, at least not legally. So let's talk about places where you can go and spend part or all of your time and pay no income tax. There are a number of zero income tax countries around the world. Many of them are actually right here in the Gulf. So pretty much go all the way north to south: Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Oman. Am I missing any? Basically all zero income tax. Some have social security taxes. They just put a GST in place in the UAE, which has led a few people to suggest that there may be a small income tax coming soon, i.e. what happened in Andorra, where they won as high as 10%. So the Gulf for right now, zero tax, and that's why if you're anything but a US expat, if you're German or Dutch or anything else, people come to Dubai, to Muscat, to Abu Dhabi and work, and they don't pay any tax. Other places, the Caribbean, of course, a big one. You've got the Cayman Islands, you've got the Bahamas. A little bit further north, you've got Bermuda. You've got a few other small enclaves like Brunei on Borneo in Asia. So these are some of the big tax-free countries. In Europe, you've basically got Monaco. That's the big tax-free country. But here's the challenge. For the average nomad capitalist, someone who's running a business, someone who wants to travel around, someone who wants to create a lifestyle, these countries may not work. Some people don't want to live in the Gulf. Some people don't want to live on a tiny island in the Caribbean. And a lot of these countries that have zero tax are also not very friendly just to coming and setting up shop. You need some kind of work permit. You need to have a job. You need to make an investment in the case of Monaco or the Caymans. You can't just show up and just get a residence permit just because you want to start a small business. And so that's where the issue of territorial tax comes into play. So a lot of people start their search when they want to live the nomad capitalist lifestyle by saying, where can I go and pay zero tax? And they just search zero income tax countries and find the ones I just mentioned. The challenge is that places here like windswept Kuwait, again, not that easy to get into. But if you can go somewhere and spend part-time or even full-time and not pay any tax, what does it matter if everyone else is paying tax? So this is where you have territorial tax countries that come into play, like Singapore, like Hong Kong, like Malaysia, like Panama, Nicaragua, Thailand. These are countries where with the right amount of planning and by avoiding certain mistakes, you can pay zero tax. You can live there, and provided that your income is made somewhere else, you pay no tax. So while Hong Kong does have an income tax, if your income comes from businesses that you run overseas, if you have rental properties overseas, if you have passive income from overseas, you can keep that money outside of Hong Kong, or even bring it into Hong Kong in many cases, and not to pay tax because it wasn't generated in Hong Kong. Singapore is the same way. Now these countries, these territorial tax countries, have their own challenges. Again, certain people make mistakes where they, for example, go to Hong Kong, set up a Hong Kong company, make their money in a Hong Kong company, then say, why am I paying tax? You have to make the money overseas. So there's a whole planning process that goes into place. But you can live in Hong Kong and not have to pay any income tax. You can live there basically tax-free as long as you don't have a salaried job in Hong Kong. But the challenge with places like this is that they're becoming more and more difficult. Who wouldn't want to go to a beautiful country with lots of services, lots of amenities, none of the downsides of a place like the Persian Gulf or a tiny island, and all the benefits of where you come from and no tax? Well, these countries realize that. Singapore now says, unless you're starting a big company that's going to be the next Facebook or the next Merck, we want you to have 5 million Singapore dollars on deposit before we let you in. Hong Kong got rid of their capital entrant investor scheme. So the ways to get into territorial tax countries are shrinking. Thailand and Malaysia are still somewhat accessible. Panama and Nicaragua and Costa Rica still somewhat accessible, although lots of bureaucracy in Latin America that sometimes drags things out. But there is a plan that you can create, and again, it's not usually as simple as just saying, hey, I'll just go to Malaysia, problem solved. But there is a way to put your company in one country, have that company bank somewhere else, you live in a country like Malaysia or Panama, and you set up your personal banking somewhere else to where you don't pay any personal income tax. Even though the country you're living in has an income tax, you can avoid it. There are even one or two examples of EU countries where you can live there part-time and not pay income tax. But this is where the planning process really comes into play. If you want to live in Monaco, it's €1 million of investment, and actually in reality a lot more. But if you want to live in a place like a Dubai or Monaco and you have money to invest, they'll let you in. If you're the average entrepreneur and you don't want to invest a lot of money, you just want to live there, that's where the planning process comes into play. We do that at Nomad Capitalist. If you have questions, leave a comment below or go to nomadcapitalist.com for more information on how you can get your tax rate as low as possible and hopefully to zero like the folks here in Kuwait. So nomadcapitalist.com. If you're just getting started, make sure you subscribe to our channel here to get the latest videos and updates as well.